India, although I did not see it, other people did, there was somebody who died on the side of the road. Nobody picked up the body for a while because it was not any part of their in-group. And so we live in a universe here where a lot of the ethics of helping other people, all people having some sense of equality, is kind of built into our systems. And so when we live that, we can then grow into a space that already has some of the biggest hurdles dealt with. When I think about the courage about when you're Christian and what it does to life and tough, think if you were a Coptic Christian in Egypt and your church could get burned down or your family could get murdered for being Christian. I can't imagine what it would be to be a Christian in Pakistan, where if you don't handle it right, the penalty is put to death. So if I were a Christian in Pakistan and I came and said, hey, would you like to know about Jesus, and word got out, I would be put to death. There are people who do live, who accept our Lord at levels I can't comprehend. I really hope that if ever tested, I would have that kind of strength. But we have the blessing of having a cultural overlay that has many of the biggest hurdles built in. And as I used that expression, I think yesterday, you can't explain to a fish they're wet. And when I hear people say like, well, we're not a Christian country, and I'm thinking, well, there's no official Christian religion, but if you look at how our laws are done, the nature of how the Constitution is written, the timing in it, and a lot of our laws, we have a Christian-based country. We may not have a state religion, but the big hurdles, we are so blessed to live in an environment where big hurdles have been done, so our hurdles are more personal hurdles. And I pray for those people in Africa, Pakistan, India, Egypt, where being a Christian is not being ridiculed by the kids in the class. Will my house be here when I come home? So to answer sort of Nick's question, yeah, there are parts of the world where being a Christian is not easier than just per se. It's easier on your soul. It's easier on how you get through eternity, but it is scary every day. Luckily, my context is here and now. But I don't want to belittle his question that there are parts of the world and lots of our history where choosing to love the Lord with an open heart could have some pretty horrific consequences. And I'll just say we are so blessed to live in this universe right now. As much as it may be that, think of it as an older guy who looks like me, I proclaim in a group that, let me make sure this is back on. Yep. I'm a Christian. How long do you think? You think you could use a stopwatch before somebody in the room thinks, well, then you're a misogynist, or you're a bigot, or you're anti-environment, or they're going to come up with a preconceived notion and it's not going to be good. But it's a preconceived notion, it's not a threat to my life. And so in that regard, I think being here is an incredibly blessed thing. And I hope none of us in our lives have to be tested. But if we are, I hope we have the strength of heart to not fail. And that goes to me too. But no, you brought up a really good point. Historically, no, it was not easier. And there are parts of the world where it is not easy. And I really admire the people who stay through where life is on the line instead of someone calling you a name. Big difference. But so excellent point, excellent question. Thank you for asking it. All right. On our third thing, putting first things first, this is probably what I call, when we put the pieces together, you're not going to find it so much in your life now. As I've seen, you guys have your breaks and you're hanging out downstairs and the whole bit. There will come a time in your life where there are simply not enough hours in the day. It is not possible. I think of my daughter and son-in-law, who are up to 3 kids now. So there's no man-to-man defense. They're in zone now. Where between, Rowan's got volleyball and goes to now a different school than Eleanor, who has soccer practice, and then Francis is in beanie weenies, whatever this little thing is they do where they kick the ball around. And they're all at different times, and they're all in different places, and there's 2 parents, and by the way, my son-in-law runs the business I used to have. and then the whole bit. I look at their schedule, the amount of free time they have, zero. Zip. I don't even know why, other than the Disney Channel, why they have any, anything on any streaming at all, other than the electronic babysitter. They don't really watch anything. So you're going to have more things to do, and it's very easy to let the demands suck up your time. And I don't know who else admitted early on about being an artful procrastinator. I was really good at it in my earlier years. When I was your age, I had it down to an art. Now I at least fight with it. Doesn't own me, I still can do it. There's some examples in here that you could put my picture next to. If I have a really difficult task I don't really want to confront, it's amazing how organized my closet can get, even labels. Get the label maker going. I'm doing something productive in what needs to be done. So one of the things that we want to look at the skills is how we keep it in front of me so we don't fall away from our prayer time. We don't fall away from the reflection time. The Lord said, take that day of rest. Part of it wasn't just a day of rest, it was a day of reflection. And when life gets too busy and your day of reflection goes out the window, a whole lot of other stuff goes out the window with it. So the great $64,000 word I call is discernment. Again, as I've said, anyone who says changing a habit is easy has never tried. Whenever it says, well, we're looking for life balance, there is no such thing as life balance. They're simply discerning what's important, getting it in there, understanding how important you are in that process. So built into taking care of your kids and making that call to your aging grandmother and whatever else you do needs to have the time for you too. Because the number one thing you will forget as your life grows more complicated is yourself. And if you don't build yourself into that schedule, then all the wonderful disciplines we get will start to fade away and you'll be sucked into the abyss. And the way I look at it is then your day becomes a mole whacking day. Anybody ever played mole whacking? All right. You get overwhelmed, that becomes your day. If you don't organize it, so I got to do this, whoop, I got to do that, whoop, I got to do this. And at the end of the day, it's like, what did I do? I don't know, but I whacked a lot of moles. Did you get stuff done? Yeah. What was it? Not sure, but I whacked a lot of moles today. A lot of people will go through life like that. It does not help at all. So we're really going to talk about how to put that in order. So we've talked about the kind of ends we want to have, about being proactive. We want to be fully engaged. We want to do the right thing. We want to take care of ourselves. We want to live in that hope and joy and that peace we can have. Okay, that means we got to figure out how to prioritize the things we have to do, the things we want to do, and the distractions that take us from what's effective. So as we look at that, what do we focus on with integrity or discipline, and how do we prioritize? If we don't prioritize, then we don't know what to focus on. And if you don't prioritize, sort of everything looks important and the day just goes right out the window. And like I said, I to this day, I catch myself when I have something I don't want to face but got to do, or it's difficult or very complicated, being wonderfully productive at something that's absolutely unimportant and not urgent. And I've been practicing some of these for 40 years, and I'm still doing it. Better, get better, I got that habit down. So the common thing is, well, I spend the time on what's urgent. Well, ideally, if we think about our life properly, everything shouldn't be urgent. All right? What we want to do is not focus on just what's urgent, but what's actually important. Because sometimes there are things that feel urgent that really aren't. All right? And if there's one thing in our era that you guys have to fight with, I just thank God I didn't grow up with one of these things. I mean, I can be accused of having the attention span of a fruit fly sometimes now. You give me one of these, man, it would be awful. Did anything come in today? There's nothing urgent on this thing. But there are times, anyone ever felt like I kind of compelled, like, oh, I haven't looked at this for a while. Maybe there's something there. None of you guys have ever felt that? Wow. You guys are impressive. So there's nothing on here that's urgent. But we will get sucked into, we got to spend time on what's important. So what is common practices? You try to do too much, You don't plan enough or not at all, so your day becomes a mess. You give in to what's going on in the moment, and then you wake up and the things you had to get done don't get done. So what we want to work on is how to think about setting priorities, eliminating what's unimportant, planning your day. And as your life gets busier as you get older, that's how we keep all the reminders intact. And as you saw, I use pictures, I have that Bible, I have things all around me every day to remind me to listen to the Lord, have my open heart. Doesn't have to be obvious. Yeah, I have a little gold cross pin that sometimes I wear, which when I travel and have it on all the time, they ask, "Oh, are you a pastor?" "Oh, what's your denomination?" Well, I take that as a compliment, although I'm not officially a pastor anywhere. All right. We don't have a lot of time with this. I'm going to skip through, with this. And I want to watch this video because there are parts of this that I just had to laugh were so applied to me after doing this. Now, it's called the Time Matrix. But what I point out is that Stephen Covey did extremely well, made a lot of money on his books. But this was developed the first time it's found with Dwight Eisenhower. He used it to prioritize what it took to win the Second World War, and then as president. It has now been grabbed by several other people to use as theirs, but in fact, it was originally known as the Eisenhower Square. So, Mr. Covey, I'm sure, sold some extra books using it. It's a great tool, but I got to give credit for this one to Dwight Eisenhower.
It starts with understanding the return on your time and energy represented by the time matrix.
Can you turn it down a little bit?
The matrix has two axes. The vertical one is importance. The horizontal one is urgency. Together, they form 4 quadrants. Quadrant 1 is for things that are both important and urgent. They are things we care about and that must be done now. This is where we find crises, emergency meetings, last-minute deadlines, pressing problems, and unforeseen events. We call this the quadrant of necessity. Time spent here is necessary, but you usually get a return that's equal to or less than the time and energy you spend. If you live here for long, you will burn out. Quadrant 3 is for things that are urgent, but that are not important. These are things that come at us. They're things that we feel like we need to act on because they clamor for our attention. But when we take a closer look, they turn out to be unimportant, low-value activities. This is where we find a lot of needless interruptions, unnecessary reports, and irrelevant meetings. It contains other people's minor issues and is often filled with unimportant email, tasks, phone calls, and so forth. We call this the quadrant of distraction. And it always generates a return that is less than the time and energy you spend. If you spend a lot of time here, you're likely to feel very busy, but ultimately ineffective and unfulfilled. Quadrant 4 is for things that are neither important nor urgent. We really shouldn't be here at all, but we often get so worn out spending time in quadrants 1 and 3 that we go here as a way to escape. This is a place where we shut off our brains and don't do anything of value. Here we find trivial work along with excessive television, gaming, internet surfing, gossip, and other time wasters. We call this the quadrant of waste. Time spent here is unnecessary and generates 0 return. If you spend a lot of time here, you're likely to feel lethargic, ineffective, and unfulfilled. Quadrant 2 is for things that are important, but not urgent. These are things that really matter to your results, but that won't happen unless you act on them. It's the quadrant of effectiveness because it's where you find the things that really make a difference and move you toward your mission, like proactive work, achieving important goals, creative thinking, planning and prevention, relationship building, learning and renewal, as well as true recreation. These things don't come at you. You have to decide to invest your time in quadrant 2. Time spent here always generates a return far greater, often exponentially greater, than the time and energy you put into it. To be highly effective, you need to consistently prevent the crises that consume your time and energy in Quadrant 1, minimize the time you spend on the distractions of Quadrant 3, eliminate entirely the time you spend in Quadrant 4, and expand the amount of time you invest in Quadrant 2. Working and living in Quadrant 2 means that you're focused on the things that matter, that change the game, that have a significant impact on your results. It's a mindset that helps you determine which things are truly the first things that will generate significant value in your work and your life.
So as we think that, I would hope that as we went through these, all would you have see yourself sometimes in all four of them. And I will admit to myself, yeah, you can Google this time matrix thing and you'll find hundreds of images and explanations all over the web. I have a couple extra copies, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People and Speed of Trust. I'm going to leave the books behind if anybody wants to look at them. If I got do I have a laser thing? No. Oops, there we go. So what we find is, I'm sure all of you find yourself from time to time in all of these. As your life grows in complexity, these type things will begin to edge out this one. There's nothing urgent about planning your week. There's nothing urgent always about taking a break today at 4 o'clock. I've been busy, so at 4 o'clock I'm going to take a break. I'm going to engage with my friends, I'm going to clear my head, and then I'll be better later. All of a sudden, something over here will come up, or something over here you think it's important come up, and you'll say, well, taking that little break, well, I can give that up. And pretty soon over time, we start giving up all the things, because there's two aspects of life. There's living in your life, and there's working on your life. And you must always have time to work on your life as well as work in it. If you work in it only, and therefore the only insight you have is that, then you eventually become the ball in the pinball machine, bouncing from one thing to the next, trying to cope. When you get back and you look at it, you can make a difference. And so I looked at trivia busy work. I mean, I really joked about some of the things in here, pleasant activities. Anybody ever blasted away part of a day binge watching some show? Yes, What?
Usually when I'm sick.
When you're sick. You get a pass when you're sick, but there have been times, when, I don't know I won't even mention, dumb stuff that Paramount Plus or HBO or stuff comes up with, but I'm only going to watch one episode. I'm going to give myself a break, and 3 episodes later you go, oh man, I just burned up 3 hours.
You're not going to watch a movie because it's too long, but then you watch 2 or 3.
Then you watch two or three episodes.
Totally done that.
That is it. Who has ever decided not to watch a movie to watch a single episode and then watch multiple episodes anyways? Yes, my darling bride has become addicted to Yellowstone. She's always like, can we watch 2 tonight? And it's like, no, we gotta be careful, Fag. We're gonna end up around. It is so easy to go here. And this one for me, I'm still sometimes when I've got a deadline coming up and I just don't feel like messing with it, I won't binge watch, but I'll do something very like, can't say that the label maker has made all my closet shelves, but my closet shelves do not need a label maker. Bars hold shirts, drawers hold socks. It's easy. I'm not hanging my socks or stuffing my shirts in a drawer, right? But somehow you feel the need to label them. But if you can get this is something, I'll be happy to print some out and pass them out. If there's 1 or 2 things you take away that you take with you later in life, it's this thinking process. Because this will help you. And I don't want to throw out something nutty, but I'm going to share with you 1 week of mine, because I time block. And this was April of 21. And you can see it was kind of full, because I do actually work. I was actually working from 5:45 till 8 a.m. this morning. But either way, so at the beginning of the week, I look at what do I have to accomplish, and I block the time out. work. I was still getting my master's in ministry, so I had homework, the Easter brunch, clean the backyard and garage. Boy, isn't that a perpetual motion? And so on. It got in all the things that I needed to get done. Our K group, our small group meeting, life group. I was in 2 different groups at the time. My wife's health. Now you could say, wow, that's pretty crazy productive. What's missing in there?
Sleep.
No, that got to start down here somewhere. Luckily, the calendar ends at 7 p.m. All right, sleep. That's a small part of a bigger answer. What's missing?
Rest.
There's no rest in there. There's no reflection time in there. Now there's self-care. Now I don't design normally my weeks like this because January, February, March, we were actually here because my wife was diagnosed with breast cancer while we were here. And it was very stressful for her, so I focused 100% on her engagement, her health, so her mind didn't go places. Because I'd known, because my cancer came back in 2017, and from my first diagnosis to radiation was almost 18 months of being caught in the healthcare system. Well, one more test, well, the doctor's on vacation, we move my appointment back 3 weeks, then they'd move it back 2 months, and then, well, we got whatever, lost paperwork. It was a stressful nightmare. I was not going to let my wife go through that. But then when I got home, it was like, woo, look at what I got going. So I had to become a lunatic for about 2 weeks. This is a great way to get a few things done by blocking. This would be unsustainable. This is a burnout waiting to happen. You need the reflection time, you need the recreation time, you need time with your friends, you need time to clear your mind, you need time, even if it's just one passage a day, even if it's just a moment of prayer, and set in some time to reflect on your week and draw on the strength of the verses we know about. That needs to get plugged in here. There was virtually no quadrant 2 time in here. Now I used some quadrant 2 time to build it, but this is an unsustainable thing. This is impressive to some people. This is lunacy for long term.
What's the light blue thing?
This one?
The light blue?
Oh, team meeting?
No, light blue in the middle. Below. There you go.
Rotary? That's a Rotary meeting. If it's red, it's a hard thing. I need to be there, show up, I gotta be there. If it's blue, I should be there, but if I miss it, it's not the end of the world. Green is more of a time task orientation. And then there's to-dos, whatever, but I use this as a to-do list and a time blocker in order to manage my healthcare. If any of you did look at the samples of what my mission statement looks like, I have a lot of roles. And actually in this one, I had 2 different small groups. This is our life group from the Alive Church, where I was leading it, so I had to prep for it. And then our K group, which was being led by somebody else, fortuitously that day. So I actually had 2 small group meetings. How much reflection time did I have to prep for it? Zip. That was bad. So this is a totally unsustainable approach. So it's nice that I started my week and I got some priorities in, but you can't become obsessed with it. The folks who write these books, they have this obsession with getting things done, and it can't be an obsession. And the like. It needs to, the whole point of taking that time each day to reflect on the week, what's important, what do I need for planning, what do I need for my own breaks, what do I need to keeping my relationships up. This needs to replace, a lot of what comes out of this thing. I don't have any of the newer social apps on this thing. I don't have Twitter, I don't have TikTok. But I've been told that there's, with children, they now have some sort of a diagnostic name for the kids that get addicted to scrolling. There's actually a term for it, where younger kids get it in at 4, 5, 6 years old, kind of their brains get wired into it, and you take the machine from them, they really have problems. And I forget the term for it, but that's lunacy. If you mess up the mind of a 6-year-old, I don't know how they're going to figure this out. So again, we want to look at the habits of fully phasing this out and bringing that back in. So we desire to be organized, we have the skills, we have the knowledge, now let's make it a habit. Eradicate those, focus on those. All right, I'm going to go through, because of time, we're going to fly through some of these exercises. All right, interesting. What quadrant do you see yourself in right now? It's not a trick question. Hopefully I'm not a quadrant 4 time waster.
Mostly too, because we have a certain amount of time to be in class, we have a certain amount of time to do stuff outside of class, we have a certain amount of time to do ministries outside of class. So not really a lot of, there is, but.
All right. So we'll say we're there. Well, we want to focus on, and we're going to run through, let me just switch through. Anyone seen the concept of the big rock, small rock? I'm sorry I don't have a glass bucket. Part of the kits you're supposed to have. If you have big rocks, medium-sized, small rocks, if you fill this with the small rocks first, you can't fit the big ones in. They fall out. If you put the big rocks in and you pour the sand on the top, you can fill your bucket perfectly. And that's the wonderful imagery for look at your singular most biggest things and deal with them first. And since we're short on time, I'm going to skip a few of the exercises and kind of run through to how we would think about that. Okay, what would be a big rock just within a week when you think of, okay, I've got my schedule. Right now your schedule's pretty much done for you. And when you have a job, you'll have one. I got to show up somewhere at 7 and leave at 3, or show up at 8 and leave at 5, or whatever the numbers are. But when you think about what would be important, what would be a big rock? What is something, okay, I need to be sure I get on my schedule? What? Class? Yeah, if you're still in school, obviously class is a big one. Yep, some scriptural and reflection time.
Exercise.
Oh, big time. Some exercise, some things for your health.
Generating income.
Well, yeah, you have a job in there somewhere. Like I said, you'll have somewhere to be from when you hit somewhere in the years to come. You will have a place to be from 8 to 5, 7 to 3, a real life job. Yep.
Planning out your meals.
Yeah, being sure you have time as part of exercise, meals, reflection. Yeah, if you don't take care of yourself, and it's so easy. How many have ever felt pressed, gotten on a project, and woken up and realized you just plain missed breakfast or lunch? You know, that's not good. You are not at your smartest when you go 8 or 10 hours of work and do not eat or drink what you should.
Right now for us, like our ministries, as a big rock.
Yeah, so let's think of, okay, so we've talked about the time to take care of yourself, your ministries, what I would call school work now and work later, W-2 work as opposed to learning, all right, but equally important. So these are the kinds of big rocks you would have and how you'd want to schedule. So when you look forward to your week, I live on the Google schedule because it syncs from my computer to my phone, and it's free, which I always like free. The fact that Google knows what I want to do tomorrow before I know what I want to do tomorrow for my searches is scary, but who cares? There's 2 billion people. They could care less who I am. So when you look at those big rocks and you look at a week, you put those on first. Those are the things that are the most important you put on a schedule. Okay, I'm going to set aside Bible time, whether it's a little earlier in the morning, every day at 5 in the afternoon, after dinner. No, I really reflect well when you're older, when the kids are put in bed, you pick a time and you put that in there. You make sure you put in exercise or breaks like that a couple times a week. The difference in how you can handle stress and moving to being healthy and not healthy, you guys can take it for granted. At your age, you can practically do nothing and stay healthy. When you start getting larger digits on the left side of your age number, it gets harder. But the difference in how you approach the day, how you can handle things by being healthy and unhealthy is astronomical. I mean, if there's one thing you can do to help keep you in all this stuff, it's exercise, eat right, get the sleep you need. Because if your platform isn't solid, you can't put anything on it. Our soul, our wonderful, immortal soul lives in this physical body. Treat it with the reverence that you should.
At home, I've noticed, like, what is my best time of day? Okay, it's in the morning when I'm most awake. Great. What are all the things that I would like to do in the morning, and then which one is, like, gonna be my priority? Because, yeah, I would love to do my music in the morning when I'm fresh. Yes, I would love to go exercise in the morning when I'm fresh. Yes, I would love to do, whatever, but I'm gonna probably do my Bible study first because that's the hardest one to do when you're tired.
When you're tired, but that's part of creating a great habit. So if Bible study, and you start at this, then at 7 o'clock, right across the board becomes my Bible study. All right, you put in those things. Don't put anything else in first till you put those big rocks in. Then you can go, okay, well, I've got the big rocks in. Here's some other times. Then you can start looking at the other things that, they're important but not as important, till you gradually fill out your day. And so in effect, let me see if I'm going to flip through. Sorry about going so fast, but I want to go we'll go back to the picture. Oops, different from my other one. I thought I had one more calendar in here. So you gradually fill it in, but you don't want to fill the whole thing. What I showed you was lunacy. That is what you need to do sometimes. I was coming back in April, having been gone for 2.5 months and caring for my wife's care. There were a lot of things that are important, but they weren't as important as my wife's care. So you know what? On the back burner they go. Well, then when my wife's care reached a certain point where she was comfortable, and then I had to go, okay, back up the truck, open it up, tilt it, see what falls out, then you end up with it. A normal one would be put in your big things, have your repeaters, where if it's 7 o'clock every morning, I'm gonna have some Bible and reflection time. I always found it, for me, better at the end of the day, because I was always stressing in the morning about what I had to do in the day, so I really wasn't focused. So as much as I tried to do it in the morning, I was, okay, I've done a good, effective day. I didn't get everything done, but it's not 5 o'clock, I'm done. I've done enough. Very important concept, enough. Remember, we got the 7th day is the day of rest because in the first 6 you did enough. But that applies to our work day too. At a certain time, you've done enough. You give yourself that break. And so for me, the great time to do my scriptural or reflection time was at the end of the day because I had, my brain isn't going to, at 8 o'clock I got to do this, 9 o'clock I got to do this, and 11 o'clock I got to do this. I could let it go. You find that time of the day. That was a big rock, but for me, it was the end of the day. Most people are good at first thing in the morning. That just didn't work for me. So you put the different pieces in, and then you build it out. And unfortunately, as I put these together, I meant to have one more calendar. But as you take that quadrant, we've talked about the roles we have. We look at the things, we looked at our mission, we reflect on that, and you think of the roles you have. Hopefully each of you wrote down some roles. It is very easy when you're busy with one to forget the other ones. And part of looking at the roles is you may look at the 5 roles you have and go, Gads, in my family, I make it a point I'd like to reach out to my extra family members. I've been busy. I haven't talked to a family member in a month outside of my own nuclear family. I should do that. Well, then you pop it on your calendar. Or else it'll go another month and you'll forget. That's where the discernment comes in. When you look at that list of the things you have to do and you prioritize, there's always a second list and a third list. This is something you should get to, but it's not a big rock. It's just one of them. You don't sweat them, but you don't want to forget them. And that's where when you look at those roles, I've noticed a lot of my papers are around it. I certainly suggest any of you keep that format document I gave everyone. Maybe someday it works, some days it doesn't. But when you write down just the roles you have and the things you want to do in it, then when you plan out your week, when you spot one that goes, Gads, I haven't done this in a while, even just taking care of yourself. Gee, I haven't been to the beach in 2 weeks. For those who are addicted to surfing, I haven't surfed in 12 hours. No, they're not that bad. But we do have surfing ministers, so they're good at it. But There may be things that are very important you just let get away from you. Gee, I haven't caught up with a friend in X amount of time, then you get it on your calendar. You cannot fit it all in. And that's where the $64,000 word discernment comes in. Because you've got your big ones, we do those all the time. We have some slightly smaller ones we try to fit in. And then there's this whole plethora of little ones that you just don't want to get away from you. And you gradually schedule the big recs, organize and prioritize the rest, and go with it from there. We'll skip this part. So we focus on the highest priorities and the unimportant. When you get in the habit and you take some of the stress out of the day, the need for the mind-numbing part actually gets smaller, which is really helpful. Now that doesn't mean there aren't some days that may be so long and so strenuous and so difficult. You just say, you know what, I need an hour of mindless. It's not awful to have an hour of mindless. You just can't have it be 3 hours every day, or it'll start to really take away from the things you may want to do. And the last thing you want to do is have it encroach on your big things. So as I talk about the discernment in this habit, is there any insight that hopefully any of this bubbled up for any of you? It's not a trick question. I'm looking for your input. I've never taught students before. I've always taught 40 and 50 and 60-year-olds. Does it resonate? Does it make sense? Talk to me. Feedback, please.
Well said.
Makes a lot of sense.
I really like the life balance square.
What?
I really like the life balance square.
Yeah, the Eisenhower Square is a really good way to help prioritize those things. Yes, sir.
Can you go back one slide?
Yep, right down. I was going to say, well, I could probably email this. And I thought, well, there's after the end of my day's worth, there's 600 more slides that are just left over I didn't use from the 5 or 6 days of material, as well as quite a lot of videos. So it's big.
Honestly, this has been really affirming because this is the way I think. And sometimes I'm like, am I being selfish for like wanting to keep my nap or wanting to keep my walk, or like just, you know, or it's really hard to just keep that. And you're like, if I miss it this day, then I gotta get it in the next day, or, you know. So it's just kind of affirming.
Yeah, and once you get out of a habit, you can get back in it easier than the first time, but you don't really want to break them. When you get a good one, it's a good idea to keep it. You go 3 months without it, and now I'm starting to get back into my exercise routine. From September through about 2 weeks ago, I could not exercise because of my medical fiascos, all my kidney stones. And so I went 3.5 months. In August, I ran a half marathon. Last week, I ran 3 miles with 2 walk breaks in it. And I woke up the next morning and my quads were singing to me, and I'm trying to bend over to buckle my shoes and my back hurt. And I thought, man, just 3.5 months. So now I'm going through that whole grinding process of trying to bring myself back up. And most habits are, I call it the 747 theory of management. All right, it takes 100% of power to get a 747 in the air, but only 20% to fly it. So the hard part is getting it up there. If you can keep it up there, it's much easier. So if you develop a good habit of getting on that calendar to every Sunday night, take a little reflection about what's coming in the week, get a few things on the calendar, get some reminders from those roles that aren't big rocks but are important, get a few things in there. Then at the end of the day, when you get to 4 or 5 in the afternoon, you can say, you know what? Today has been a good day. And if you operate it under what I call the internal mission concept, where you're looking at your day not in the concept of did I get everything done, because there's a lot of things you can't control, but was I honest and caring with all the people around me? Did I live the lessons of our Lord in a good way? Did each person I touch feel better, was better than before I touched them? You know, if you have each of those put together, then you can end a day where everything on that calendar blew up, and man, I had a great day. Because that day is not defined by the control of others or the circumstance. It's controlled by you living that life. God intended it for us to live with a peace of heart, enjoy, and relish this world. I mean, look at what we live in. It is awesome.
Yeah, there's also times in your life where you literally can't get a lot of things done because of health or whatever.
Yeah.
And then you can't base your whole purpose and good feeling about your day about getting stuff done because
You can't get the stuff
you
done.
couldn't have done it.
But, you know, if I can, while breathing through pain where I hold on to something to keep from falling over and still have a good personality, then I'll take that I have lived my good day. That was December 12th till January 6th. I had an 8 mm kidney stone stuck in this kidney. The months before, I'd had one stuck in this one. I got a matched set of kidney stones for Christmas. Personally, I would rather have had 2 truckloads of coal, but, you know,
2 front teeth.
2 front teeth. But either way, all right. All right, so we'll go on. Let's take, theoretically, our review, because I didn't bother to redo our slides. We went from 2 hours to 3, and I'm kind of happy about that. You know, so if I look at the conclusion of our part 1, when we think about our victory, you know, when you think, whether you wrote down an official mission, when you think of it, we've already got one, but let's encapsulate one that lets you have a victory, a personal internal victory every day living it. That's wonderful. We can be proactive in that, in the way we behave. We can bring others into that same peace. And God willing, they start asking us how we have that peace, which is our point of entry to bring them to the Lord in peace that we know. And then prioritize that effort so that we can be not only effective in the hours we choose to use, but also take time for yourself. Never underestimate the importance of keeping you, yourself, your platform for dealing with others, strong, solid, healthy, focused. Because you cannot be any of the things you want to be to others if you're unhealthy, distracted, you know, this kind of stuff doesn't work. And the beauty of it is when you're with other like-minded people, we will support each other. You will get your greatest support from the small groups you'll be in. And I'll mention this later, but if there's one thing that you keep, I've only said that this is the only one of the 9 things I've said you're supposed to keep the whole time from me. Through the rest of your life, keep engaged with small groups. The feedback, the keeping your compass focused, the strength when you need it, the ability to help others when they need it in your small group is a life. It's an anchor of life. I guess we're an anchor house, so we should have one. So I recommend that. So, okay, so we're now finished with this whole first part. And I went 2 minutes over. That's all right. I think you can forgive me?
Yeah.
All right, so let's take another 15-minute break. And we'll start back about 11.